Okay, we are recording. So, James, thank you for coming. So first off, if you could just kind of give us a brief introduction of who you are, what you do, and yeah.
Sure. I'm James. I'm primarily a software engineer. My area of expertise is cloud computing.
Okay, cool. And so how much do you think you know about blockchain? Do you use cryptocurrency? Is it something that you've maybe gotten into recently or not so recently? Kind of give us an overview on that as well.
I know a little bit about it. I took a course on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in grad school. I've traded it a bit. I've never used it outside of just speculating in investments,
Okay,
um, or at least outside of academic projects. Um, so I know probably more than the average person, but I'm by no means an expert.
cool. And kind of just a question leading off that. Um, I'm kind of interested to see, like, where do you think crypto and blockchain can go in the future? Like, do you think it's going to be a big part of the future one day, as in like, maybe by 2030, will there be maybe some countries that consider it legal tender, or do you think it's kind of just something that'll stay the way it is right now, and not grow much more than it is?
Well, I mean, I think we've already reached the point where some countries consider it legal tender, right? I think El Salvador has adopted it.
Mhm.
There are a few others that are maybe looking into it. As to whether it ever achieves mainstream adoption for payments, I think that's kind of anyone's guess. I don't know. I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic that it has more real world applications 10 years from now than it does today. But yeah, I think my guess is as good as anyone's.
Alrighty, cool. And so now a little bit more about, more about why we're doing this interview. So as we discussed before, we're trying to pitch how blockchain can be used in sports to kind of affect fan engagement and, hopefully improve it. So in your opinion, how do you see fan engagement in sports right now? Maybe if you could tell us, kind of certain trends that you may see, how fans interact with the sport right now, in your opinion, any sport, really.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. That's a pretty broad question. How would I characterize fan engagement with all of sports? Um, yeah, I don't know. Do you have I think I would need a more specific
Right.
question.
So, for example, let's just start with this. There's certain maybe complaints about when players get, especially in the bigger sports, they kind of get bombarded with these fan engagement like opportunities, and it just seems like they're kind of being maybe controlled by certain like sports institutions. So like it's run all of it by the team or certain companies that maybe have certain events for these fan engagement opportunities. So like kind of first off, just talking about that, because that's one part of our project. Do you think it's maybe a little bit too invasive, or is it fine? Do you think it could get better? um yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't have a strong opinion on that. I would need to know more about it.
Okay, no worries. And so how about mm, so have you obviously, blockchain is something that can be decentralized, so there's no, big like central, I don't know, piece maybe to control uh kind of the movement of certain things, certain actions. So in your opinion, kind of knowing blockchain, and how do you think it could be implemented to sports, specifically for fan engagement, but anything is good really. How do you think blockchain can be implemented into the sports industry?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a good question. The one kind of intriguing application of it that I've seen is with NFTs. I think there's a website that sells NFTs of basketball highlights.
Mhm.
So that's a way of taking that digital video clip and turning it into something that approximates a baseball card or something that that can be traded. So I'd say that's one of the more interesting applications that I've seen.
Yeah, right. That's definitely something we talked about in our assignment, how NFTs can, kind of, they can really affect fan engagement because it might allow certain players to have control of their own, monetization when it comes to fan engagement. That's one thing they could do. Even though, for example, those that you mentioned were from the NBA, anyone can have an NFT. Um, so, kind of building off that, do you think it would be a positive thing that, certain players now may take more control if blockchain was implemented into fan engagement? They could take more control of how they're monetized, how they're advertised, because basically that's kind of what blockchain can do for them, is they could control how fans interact with them. They can monetize their own NFTs or monetize their own moments while playing, monetize their own merch. So what do you think about that? Do you think that's a positive thing, a negative thing? What are your opinions?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I don't personally see an issue with it. Um, yeah. Uh, I guess especially if you're looking at sports that are less well compensated, um, right? I mean, you might have an NFL player um, who's maybe a marginal starter, but not necessarily a star player. Their average careers are very short, and they don't have the same degree of security that an NBA player would have, for example. So, um, yeah, I mean, I think that that could be a good thing for a lot of players.
Right. Great. Um, so so we touched on NFTs, kind of touched on a little more about um, how blockchain can affect these athletes. Now, in your opinion, what do you think, maybe there's something more that what do you think is something that maybe the teams can do to utilize blockchain for fan engagement? We kind of talked about how maybe the players can use it, but what's one way that you believe maybe teams can use it? How could they utilize that to improve their fan engagement?
Yeah, that I'm not sure about. I don't have a ton of ideas, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I mean, this would be a relatively new thing, so there's no problem with that. Just want to know if you had an opinion on it, or, and then finally, so we went over the team, the player. Is there anything you think maybe the fan could get more involved while using blockchain for fan engagement? When they buy these NFTs, when they buy these sports moments, or like when they, get involved using blockchain and fan engagement. Do you think it's something that could bring them maybe closer to the sport, or, is it something that maybe isn't so great for the sport either, or any sport?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would all depend on the application, but you know, certainly with buying sports highlights, I think if you have a fan, they might be more engaged if they feel like they have some unique ownership over some highlight or moment from that team. So yeah, I don't really foresee it reducing fan engagement. But yeah, I think again, it would just depend on the application.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming, and we appreciate your input on all of this. So thank you.
Sure. Good luck with the project.
Thanks.
Do you know James, or was he just someone your coach